We'll start with disclosures of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Council? Nothing? I see no pecuniary interest. Approval of council minutes held on June 25th. Moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that's carried. Is there any business arising out of the minutes? See none. Moving on to reports of staff and delegations, and we start with the audited financial statements. Ms. Roach.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald. It's my pleasure to report the 2018 draft audited financial statements for the municipality. Lindsay Ayatona is in the audience this evening, who is the municipality's audit partner from Hicks, McPherson, Ayatona, and Dreger, should council have any questions. The audited financial statements will become final once approved by council. The auditors were on site to complete their interim work in December, and the final work was completed in May of this year. In accordance with the Municipal Act, the financial affairs of the municipality are required to be submitted annually to the ministry. The Act outlines the requirement to have the financial statements also be available to the public. So these financial statements are presented following Public Sector Accounting Board standards, which we refer to as PSAB, which is different than the way that we prepare budgets, as they are done on a cash basis. So under PSAB, depreciation is calculated on all municipal capital assets, as well as post-employment benefits and landfill closure and post-closure costs are calculated. Leamington's share of the ownership in Essex Power Corporation and Union Water are included as part of the financial statements, in addition to all the boards under the municipality's control, such as the Police Services Board, the BIA, and the Joint Animal Control Board. So the consolidated financial or statement of financial position, which is also referred to as the balance sheet, reflects all of the financial assets, liabilities, and accumulated surplus for the municipality. The notes to the financial statement support many of these balances. The consolidated statement of financial operations presents a summary of the municipality's revenues and expenditures for the fiscal year. The statement of change in financial assets is a statement that provides a reconciliation of the annual surplus to a change in the net financial assets. The statement of cash flows provides an analysis of the changes in the municipality's cash position for the year when incorporating the operations, asset purchases, and debt payments. The 2018 fiscal year ended with a cumulative net surplus position of approximately $306 million, which is an increase of about $19 million over prior years. The major changes in the surplus are capital assets, which increased by $14 million, and an increase of cash. The other variances are outlined on page 5 of my report. So this amount does not reflect an operating surplus, as is discussed in the last report on tonight's agenda. The $306 million is truly the difference between what the municipality owes to suppliers, contractors, staff, external financing agencies, and what the municipality owns in infrastructure like roads, bridges, sewers, the rec, marina, and buildings. So the preparation of these financial statements is truly a team effort. The finance team works tirelessly to make sure that these are accurately reflect the financial position of the municipality. So for all their hard work, I'd like to thank my team. So the auditors have provided an opinion indicating that the 2018 financial statements are fairly presented. So it is recommended before council this evening that the 2018 audited consolidated financial statements for the corporation of the municipality be approved, that administration be authorized to publish the 2018 audited consolidated financial statements on the municipal website, and that Hicks, McPherson, Ayatona, Dreger, LLP be appointed as the external auditors for the corporation of the municipality for fiscal 2019. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Council, are there questions of either Ms. Roach or Ms. Ayatona? Well, if there are no questions, moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Thiessen. All in favor? And that's carried. You got off free tonight, Lindsay. Thank you very much. And early. We were late. We apologize for the lateness as well. Okay, thanks so much. Thank you, Laura. Moving on to, are we going to discuss the attached financial statements separately? No. Okay, great, thank you. We're moving on to the recruitment and the compensation policy, and for that, we have Lauren Evans. Lauren, is this your first report to council? Do not be afraid. You're welcome. We're happy to have you here. Just, you might want to wait till the end to say that.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. It is recommended that council adopt the H09 recruitment and compensation for part-time employees as amended. The municipality has had a policy regarding part-time and student pay for over 20 years. The policy was initially implemented to standardize part-time rates of pay throughout the municipal departments. However, the policy also includes certain processes related to the recruitment of part-time employees. In 2017, the policy was amended as a result of an internal review of the part-time rates of pay, which review was undertaken in order to address the proposed increase of the minimum wage and to ensure that the municipality is in a position to attract and retain part-time and student workers. Schedule A to the policy sets out a single rate of pay for each part-time position, which is consistent with other municipalities' pay structure for part-time positions, which typically do not require a great deal of time to learn the job. Schedule B sets out the rate of pay for students enrolled in a cooperative education program. The schedules to the policy were part of the 2017 consultants review under the Pay Equity Act, which review required no pay equity adjustments. Part-time employees are necessary to fill the seasonal employment opportunities required to ensure that the levels of service as set out by council are met. In order to meet these levels of service, certain part-time positions have been added to Schedule A of the policy as follows. The first one being marina maintenance attendant at rate B, which is $18.36 per hour. There has been an identified need for consistent maintenance at the marina facility. Therefore, the marina maintenance attendant will be responsible for ensuring marina rules and regulations are adhered to in maintaining excellent customer service and maintenance around the municipal marina. Parks attendant at rate F being $25.21 per hour. The parks attendant will be involved in all aspects of the cleanliness and general maintenance of the municipal parks and sports facilities, including Seacliff Park and beach areas. Seasonal laborer at rate B, which is $18.36 per hour. The seasonal laborer is responsible for performing general maintenance duties at outdoor sports fields, cleaning of washroom facilities, and litter debris pickup from municipal property, while ensuring attractive, orderly, and well-maintained park areas to provide a pleasant outdoor environment for all users and visitors. Certain other non-substantive amendments have been made to the policy, including the removal of definitions, which are not relevant, identifying positions which are paid the same rate as being within rate bands for ease of reference, adding preambles for clarity and clarifying that offers of employment are conditional upon the receipt by the municipality of a satisfactory police clearance. The above noted positions will be managed within the 2019 Marina and Public Works budgets, and therefore there's no financial impact to report.
Thank you, Lauren. Are there questions? Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. Laura, I'm going to apologize up front for not giving you a heads up to this question this afternoon. So if you're not prepared with the answer, I completely understand. But parks attendant rate F, $25.21 per hour per part-time. What sets that parks attendant so much above the other seasonal laborers?
So the park attendant at times will act as more of a leader in guiding the seasonal laborers upon the day-to-day. So in the event that the public works supervisor cannot be at the park, or there's other, duties that need to be delegated throughout the day, they're there as kind of a leadership role. And they also do have some additional tasks on top of the seasonal laborers.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Appreciate the answer.
Sorry, Councillor Dunn, I have you next.
Through you, Madam Mayor. What was the original wages that were prescribed for these employees? We brought them up to the 25.21, the 18.36. What's the original wages?
The marina maintenance attendant, that's a brand new position that we're adding, so that's a new wage. The seasonal laborers, they were at 16 with the 2% increase that was previously passed. They're now at 16.32, and we're asking for that increase to 18.36 an hour.
My question is that when we have students that come back to us, do we start them off at, say, 17 or the 16? And if they come back to us the following year, and they might be able to be put into a position of supervisory, wouldn't we give them that additional money? So every year they come back, we give them an additional dollar per hour or something, as opposed to a certain rate, just to try and attract them, to get them to come back every year?
At the time, there's nothing like that in place at the moment. Yeah, the increase this year was as a result of the 2%.
I have Councillor Wilkinson next.
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, right? Lauren, sorry. Just looking at the way this is worded, certain part-time positions have been added. So these are whole new part-time positions, correct? And the second part to that question is, if that's the case, was it being done by the full-time staff before?
Okay, so the only position that's being, like a brand new one that's being added is the marina maintenance attendant. The parks attendant was not, for whatever reason, captured within the schedule originally. So that one, there's currently someone in that position. We were just amending the schedule to include that. And the seasonal labor, that is also an existing role that we have people working in right now.
A pay bump of $2 an hour? Thank you. Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the seasonal laborer, is that strictly student, is that strictly a student position?
Our seasonal laborers is not a student role, so we actually have student laborers as well as seasonal laborers. The seasonal laborers, their contract goes into what would be a student's school year. So the students are staying at 16, and we were hoping to increase the seasonals to attract those more mature individuals.
Okay, that's fine. Yep, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
With the mayor, thanks, Lauren. Good report. No, I wasn't going to say stellar. I just a few complaints about flower boxes at the marina and stuff. Has there been a shortage of workers, or were all the positions filled for summer employment? Because I'm just trying to fend them off and say we didn't get all the positions filled, and it's hard for everybody to move around with the way it's been. So, are all the positions filled, and if not, how many do you feel were not, or whatever?
So the marina maintenance attendant, as I mentioned, that one's not currently filled. That is pending council's approval. Parks attendant is filled. I will say, from personal experience with recruitment with seasonal laborers, we are having a struggle. I had to post that position twice this year. We're just finding that, number one, the amount of candidates and applicants that we're getting, as well as the quality of them, isn't always the greatest. So that one we have been struggling to fill. As of right now, they're running the full complement, which they were aiming for this year. They did not meet that, but they're working with what they have.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. How many present employees do we have as park attendants with the rate F?
There's one park attendant currently.
Okay, Lauren, just to get this straight. So none of these are student employees? Seasonal. Okay, that's good. I just want to put it out there because I have fielded complaints from other businesses who hire entry-level people, and the fact that they feel that they have to compete with us and are unable to do it based on rates. But we can see by what you're saying, the fact that we can't hire people either doesn't mean that it's strictly rate-based. Okay. Counselor Dunn, one more question.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So the park attendants' original wage, it's 25.21. Was it 20 originally? What was the? I think you bumped everything by $2. So for the other two positions, you bumped by $2. I apologize. I didn't remember what you said to that.
That's okay. The parks attendant is actually currently working at that wage rate right now. That was the position that is already filled that we were just adding to the schedule.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, what does Counselor Jacobs?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a statement, like I'm sort of taken back that we're paying an $18.36 an hour for a student or whoever for employment.
It's not a student. That was my question. It's not a
No,
student.
but what I'm getting at, even if it's not that much, but I mean to attract individuals to come to work. I remember when people used to climb over one another to get a job with a municipality for a summer job. And everyone's saying out there's no jobs. And here we have a good job with a decent remuneration. And it's unbelievable that these individuals don't want to come to work. So I'm just taken back by it all. Thank you.
Can't
Just
disagree.
a statement.
Can't disagree with you, Counselor. Ms. Orton, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just for, if council does approve the policy as amended, I would just ask that to be added to their resolution, that the changes to become effective as of July 7th, at the beginning of pay period 15. Just easy, keep it simple for payroll, if that's council's wish.
You don't need us to repeat that. Thank you. You're moving it, Counselor Jacobs, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, as recommended by our solicitor. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you, Lauren. See, it wasn't quite as bad as I thought it could be. Good for you. Good job. Thank you. You knew your information, and that's highly commended on that. I'll leave that up to you, Deputy Mayor. Moving on to the LPCC, Leamington Pollution Control Center Generator Upgrades Tender Award, and that's... Oh, did we miss, what delegation? 6.3. Oh. Oh, I was going to make the OPP wait to the end. Sorry, Inspector and Staff Sergeant. I apologize. I was looking on my bookmarks on the computer. It's missing there, but it's here on the written agenda. We invite you to come up, state your name, your position, and we welcome you.
Well, good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize for my voice. I have a summer cold, so I will try to speak softly, but hopefully you'll understand. My name is Inspector Glenn Miller. I'm the Detachment Commander in charge of Essex County OPP, and it's a pleasure for me to be joined by Staff Sergeant Brian Johnson. Brian is the Operations Manager in charge of Leamington, Kingsville, and Pelee Island. Your Worship, Member of Council, Deputy Mayor, Department Heads, ladies and gentlemen. The Ontario Provincial Police, as you know, is one of the largest deployed police services in North America and proudly serves over 14 million Ontarians with over 8,000 members and with over 1,000 auxiliary members. Our members provide community-based policing in 325 of Ontario's 444 municipalities, while patrolling more than 1 million square kilometers. As Ontario's police service of jurisdiction, the Ontario Provincial Police continues to lead the province wide with initiatives that counter the exploitation of children and vulnerable persons, human trafficking, disruption of organized crime, dealing with the opioid crisis that is impacting all segments of society and communities across Canada, and responding to an ever-increasing number of calls for service that are impacted with individuals who are suffering mental health care issues. Our operating platform in Leamington is one of an integrated model that allows us to deploy our assets throughout your community to meet the ever-changing environment and societal issues that we deal with. People not familiar with the OPP would see our police service as that of patrolling our highways and waterways, where that is only actually a small portion of what we do. The majority of OPP officers assigned to Leamington OPP have performed municipal policing duties throughout the province in various police jurisdictions across the province and bring with them a wealth of experience and diversified skills set to deal with a detachment that remains as one of the largest and busiest out of 162 detachments in the province. We are a mission-driven detachment and have been recognized as being progressive, innovative, and proactive in our approach of keeping our communities safe. Adaptability and flexibility is a core function, as often multiple serious calls for service can occur at the same time, and do. The implementation of the closest to the call harnesses our existing GPS technology along with computer-aided dispatch systems to ensure that those priority-based calls within your community are actioned by whatever OPP vehicle happens to be in that area and closest to the call. Often it can be from our neighboring OPP detachments within Essex County or our bordering detachments who are often within Leamington working on an investigation and assisting our officers in the community. In Leamington and throughout Essex County, we are victim-focused, intelligence-led, problem-oriented, and evidence-based. We focus on violent crime, property crime, illicit drugs, that includes opioids, cyber-related crime, traffic-related initiatives, mental health, and of course, reduction in 911 pocket dials, all of which require a priority response from our members. We also deal significantly with sexual violence and harassment, youth at risk, human trafficking, drug and substance abuse, and of course, dealing with the forever-ending traffic situation. The cornerstone of our strategy to deal with all of these issues is the development of a community safety and well-being plan that is the responsibility of the municipality, with the police certainly being one of your key partners. The shift that safety is primarily the responsibility of the police service is now everyone's responsibility, and these plans must be submitted to the government by January 2021. We will continue in Leamington to focus on collaborative partnerships that include not only the police, but our partners such as in education, healthcare, and social services, working together to make our communities safer. In developing an integrated approach, it recognizes that proactive, community-focused partnerships produce better results at lower cost to the taxpayer. Today, the public continues to call the police for non-police related events. We want to reduce the demand for reactive, resource-intensive emergency response calls by developing a more collaborative and a proactive approach where community partners share information and we all work together. This will help to prevent crime and improve outcomes for local residents by ensuring that everyone receives the right response at the right time by the right responders. It may sound difficult, but it's really not, for we've been doing this for years, and I only have to look at our provincially recognized mental health response unit, Project Safe Trade, our focus on youth through Guide, Advocate, and Protect, and our human trafficking initiatives. This is what we're doing at the strategic level in Leamington. Now, how we operationalize this, I will now turn it over to Staff Sergeant Brian Johnson, who is in charge of Leamington, and he will explain what we are seeing and what we are doing about it.
Thanks, Inspector. Just by way of introduction, I know I've met some of you in passing. My name is Staff Sergeant Brian Johnson. In my 28th year of policing, I began my career working in the London Police Service. Spent about 8 years there before coming to the OPP. I share that with you because it gives me a unique insight into the different pressures and the different issues that face municipalities such as Leamington, and understanding how to be able to work in partnership with members of the community and various community groups to be able to address those issues. From there, I did frontline policing up in a little place called Lucan, a wonderful little detachment up there. And as well, I spent some time working in criminal investigations. I've done some, worked in our provincial communications center as well too. And I've done some temporary assignments working in human resources as an operations manager. I've done regional planning. I've also spent time as a manager of the Ontario Sex Offender Registry before finally, and I also worked as a supervisor in the Elgin detachment for many years before coming here. I'm very pleased about being here. It's a wonderful community that I've seen here, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone here to be able to address some of the issues. I'm still wrapping my head around a lot of the different things going on here. I recognize that property crime and violent crime and drugs are an issue in the community. I can assure you that my goals are to utilize the analytics that we find to be able to help us to ensure that we focus our resources appropriately to address those issues. And one of the things that's important to me, and I utilized this strategy when I worked in Elgin County, is really taking a community-focused approach, bringing all the partners together, sitting down and having those discussions and looking at things from not only the analytics component, but utilizing the community mobilization and engagement strategy. And that's by finding out who in the community has a stake in the issue and working together not only to do the enforcement component, but how can we provide better support to the folks in our community to ensure that we can address any issue from all aspects. So that's kind of what we're working at the detachment to be able to do that. Again, through looking at areas that we need to put focused patrols. I understand that visibility is key and very important in the community, and we've got officers dedicated to work to that aspect as well too. There's a number of large events, and you'll see our people out there partnering with the various groups who are planning these events to ensure that they're safe for everyone here as well too. That's what I bring to the table, and that's kind of my focus, is really trying to addressing the day-to-day issues within the community. And my door is always open with respect to dealing with any of those issues and ensuring that we put the appropriate resources there. I'm not sure if council has any questions for me.
Oh, I think you can be prepared for some questions, Staff Sergeant. So who's starting? Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Staff Sergeant, welcome. My question is regarding, I know you deal with a lot of issues, speeding. What's the protocol regarding speeding in certain areas that are hotspots in our neighborhoods? Is it the number of calls that dictates somebody monitoring that area? Or is it, what is the protocol regarding that?
It's a little bit of both, actually. I prefer to have folks call when they have issues with respect to speeding. I think it's important that from an analytics perspective that we understand the scope of the issue to ensure that we put the proper resources. That being said, if anyone in the community has a specific problem with a specific area, the focus that what we do is we take that information, we provide it to all our members on patrol, including our members of the county traffic team, and then we begin to address that by having officers go out and do patrols. One of the reasons why I kind of prefer for folks to call in, it helps to identify the location, the time, and then we can help better deploy our resources to have a greater impact and create that safer community that folks are looking for. Usually when speeding is occurring, it's usually during a specific time when people are out, and that's where you want to be able to ensure that folks are safe at that point in time.
And further, I appreciate that. Yes, some of the, I also encourage them to do a lot of call-ins to let you know exactly when the time is and to show that there is a hot spot, especially when they're concerned with their families and kids walking the streets and stuff. So I'm going to keep encouraging that, but I may further talk to you in private about a couple areas, and we'll go further from there. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. And welcome, especially you, Staff Sergeant Brian. In my 5 years being on council, it's the first time I've seen the OPP in front of us, so thank you for coming. It's, I think that's a big step towards, improving our relationship, because I think improvement is needed. We just got fresh off a campaign here where we went out and we listened to the public for 2 months. We walked the streets and we go through the gauntlet line just about every day, whether it be a grocery store, Tim Hortons. And during that campaign season, a lot of the consistent criticism that came up that I heard over and over again, and it makes me sick to my stomach, is the feeling of unsafe conditions in Leamington. I'm a lifer here in Leamington. I grew up here, and it's got a different feel these days. It really does. Back when I was a young guy, it was nothing for go uptown shopping with my mom, and we'd run around the streets and wouldn't worry about nothing. I wouldn't do that these days. I have a 9, 11-year-old kids, and that's not the feeling I have anymore, and that's sad to me. And it's one of the reasons why I took this job here, is to make improvements like that, and I hope that happens by the time my kids are teenagers. So, anyway, we're working towards that. Some of the issues, though, Leamington does have a reputation. It has grown into an opioid hotspot, is the feeling I think most of this council has. I think many of our residents of Leamington have. And we deal with all the negative side effects that come from it, whether it be theft, break and enters, prostitution, vicious assaults causing death and near deaths. Why aren't we seeing more projects or investigations that crack down on these illegal activities in Leamington? I want to see stories on the 6 o'clock news, where Leamington is in the paper again or on the news at night, where they are got projects going on in Leamington. I don't see enough of that. It was so welcoming last week when we did make the news for that project on a Tier 2 operation, which you're going to hear more about tonight. That's kind of, I got a bunch more, but I'm going to let you respond to that. Leamington wants to see an improved service. It's plain and simple, fellas, and it was told to us time and time again. We need to improve our police service. The stink factor, I judge a lot by what the public brings to us. It's the smell test for me. And that was a very consistent one. And I said I would, when I do have the OPP in front of us, I would ask that question. So I'll let you respond to that one starting.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And your question is certainly a fair one, and actually a welcome one for me to be able to respond. I've done policing in this community for a long time, probably over 35 years ago, originally when I came. And it was at that particular time that I realized that there really is an underground economy that is in this particular community, other communities as well. Our stance at that particular time, we used to do a number of covert operations that we were able to then discuss. You'd see the number of roundups that we would have. The court system, however, put the requirement on is that they don't want a street roundup anymore with 20 or 30 or 40 people, which we're very capable of doing, and which we actually felt kind of addressed the problem within a community, because the judges and the judicial process didn't want to have to prosecute those number of people. So we've shifted our focus, Tim, to working with our Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau and investing significant amounts of money within this particular town. A small example of that is last week, where I do know, because I saw the alert, and we don't discuss for operational reasons how many people, but I know at one particular location, we had over 40 police officers from across Ontario at one particular location dealing with that particular issue. So we're trying to go after the individuals that are preying on the vulnerable people within this community that, without a doubt, they do have addiction problems, for sure. And the courts are asking us to identify who those individuals are, do whatever it is that you have to, and hopefully result in a successful prosecution. I often use the terminology that Some of the things that, in fact, that impact society the most are generally things that people don't see. We have very clear eyes on those particular circumstances. The core number of people that we deal with, unfortunately, becomes very repetitive. And I don't know why. I think it's unfortunate for them. That's why I'm thinking that we have to look at another approach and see what we can do to try to get them out of those addiction areas, because we're simply not in the job of simply arresting and pushing to court, because the courts end up returning those people back in the streets immediately and put it back to the problem of the police. So we make a number of arrests for drug-related offenses in the town of Leamington. Do we report in the media every single one? No, sir, we don't. And the reason that we don't is because, again, we want to just be able to keep the level fairly high. And in some cases, we make an arrest. The arrest doesn't always result in a prosecution. It results in an increase and an enhancement for our intelligence and ability to understand what is going on within this community. We're aware that there's entities from Hamilton, London, Toronto, the East Coast, out of the country, that continue to flourish here in doing various criminal enterprise crimes. And that's where those investments are. Unfortunately, it does take sometimes a long period of time, in order for us to go through this particular process. But our officers don't tolerate, when they see something related to drugs, my expectations, Brian's expectations, is that they will make an arrest and they will prosecute. Again, I think in the Leamington cells last year, the number of arrests, and again, I've never been asked this question, but I'm glad that you asked it, sir. I think we've lodged in excess of 600 people in our cells. That is significant. We probably arrested over 1,800 people within the county. I'm not saying all of those are from Leamington, but people enjoy coming to Leamington. Leamington is a nice community to live. We don't want the bad guys to like it. We want to make life as miserable as possible for those individuals who are continuing to put drugs on the streets and feel that there's no accountability for them. We're doing our best to hold those people accountable and continue with the investigations that we're doing. But no, we don't, for certain reasons, always talk in the media about those successes.
You kind of stole one of my lines I was hoping to use tonight, but I stroked it out. I wanted to say to you, please make life uncomfortable and uneasy for these people. We want them to feel unwelcome and not comfortable in our community.
Yeah, Councillor Wilkinson, I just wanted to, for me, recognize what you said in terms of how the impact of opioids on the community, and I recognize that. And one of the things I know as an organization, I know first of all, this has become an issue of Southwestern Ontario where we're beginning to see that. And to me, there's three things we have to do as an organization, and we're looking at those things, looking at the high level component. Second of all, looking at the low level issues of what's happening in the community, just like the inspector talked about. The other thing we have to look at as well is how do we get the right partners to the table to deal with the addiction issues and begin to support those folks as well too. So to me, it's a multi-pronged approach. And as an organization, we are looking at and we continue to go after those who are selling those and causing harm to members in our community as well too. So it is a multi-pronged approach. Our members are making a number of arrests, and we are removing drugs off the street on a daily basis. But that's just the beginning of the work, and I'm hoping in the next few months that we begin to look at getting some partners together and begin to look at how can we come up with an opioid strategy that we can utilize to continue to do some work to address some of the issues of addictions and try to address it from that side as well too.
Would you agree with the data that we've heard that we are considered a hot spot here in Leamington? Would you two certainly agree with that?
So we're not privy to all the information. If there's a call for service and an ambulance, EMS attends a particular location, not in all cases are we called to that particular location? So I read that in the paper as well. All I can go on is the amount of information that we see coming across our desk. I would say in Leamington, and based on, I have to compare it to the other communities as well, all the communities, including some of the ones that you wouldn't think, are continuing to being hit by that as well. So I just can't, I don't have that data in front of me all the time. I know I read it in the paper, but we have to validate it through the means that we have available.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thiessen, you had some questions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for coming out tonight. Councillor Wilkinson touched on a number of the issues that I had. One thing that I was hoping to see tonight, I was hoping to see some real hard data. 5-year statistics. Are violent crimes up? Are violent crimes down? Property crimes, drugs. I'd like to see those comparisons, especially since the contract is coming up this the end of this year, I believe. That'd be probably a good time to start seeing some of those statistics and see where we're at and see if what you're doing is truly working. When I was out on the campaign trail, there was one thing that really hit home or really bothered me, I guess. I was speaking with a resident, and she lives across from a school, and she said on a daily basis there are needles strewn about in the schoolyard and on the edge of the streets. We know we have an opioid crisis. We know we have a drug problem. But she also said that I've called the detachment a number of times and pointed out the house where all the issues are, and it was 2 or 3 doors down from where she lived. And she says, we can't get this closed down. We can't get these people. So what if you get a call and there's drug issues going on? How hard is it to get these people out of the area, to get these drug or flop houses, she called it. She said there's traffic there day and night. How hard is it to close those up?
I worked drug enforcement full-time in an undercover capacity throughout the province and including in this community for 7 years. And the protocol that we have to go through judicially now in order to get a warrant, and it has to be facted, is significant. But what we do in that particular case, and that's why we do encourage people to call. We have different means how we're going to collect that information, and a search warrant that we would prepare today, as opposed to a search warrant, I would say even 2 or 3 years ago, what the court is asking us to do, it's very difficult. It doesn't stop us from doing it because we're always working on a search warrant. Search warrants is a constant work in process all the time. We want those. We have a good idea where those locations are as well. We have the ability through other means of quickly getting that type of information to validate that there is something in a house. Surprisingly enough, a lot of people will talk to us. Very few people want to self-identify, and that's fine. We're okay with that. That's why we encourage people to utilize the Crime Stopper program, which is a wonderful program, and it works very well within Leamington. But people will tell us that I want to tell you something, but you can never say where it came from. Well, then we have to look at other means of doing it. We're used to doing that, and we respect that fact as well. We have to be very, very careful. Yeah, the issue I saw in another community today, and it caused me to send an email to that particular community because it was very similar, sir, about needles being found in a schoolyard. Like, that is just totally unacceptable. And I want to thank the community of Leamington. I want to thank the community leaders. I want to thank all of you that I know your best interests are in support of us, to help us to continue to do the best job that we can in order to make it safe. The number of calls that we get from the community is quite overwhelming now. And as long as that comes in, that feeds into our system really well, into the process that we have. It allows us to take that action. I want to just say a real quick thing if I could. It just brought me back to a moment. So my office is not in Leamington. My office is at Manning Road in the 401 in the Administration Center. So I had an individual show up at at the detachment and he wanted to speak to me. I didn't know him personally, but I certainly knew his name. He's a resident of the town of Leamington. So he came in to see me, and he was accompanied by someone else, and he sat down. And I asked him right point blank, I said, what do you do for a living? He says, I don't do anything. And I said, no, you do something for a living. What is it that you do? He says, no, nothing. And I said, well, I'll tell you what you do for a living. You're a drug dealer. And you're saying that we're harassing you and stopping you every time that we see you make a move and that we're making your life uncomfortable? I will tell you right now that that is not harassment. That is simply our job that we're required to do, and we would be negligent if we wouldn't. So if we make your day difficult, then I'm pleased by that. And we'll continue to do that until you stop victimizing individuals and putting drugs on the street in Leamington. Well, I was aware that the following day we're going to be doing a search warrant, and we did. You know what? Does it have an impact on this individual? No, unfortunately not. They continue to come back. It's hard to, sometimes we are able to move people away, and then other municipalities say, why did you move these individuals from that municipality into the other one? I guess everybody's got to live somewhere, but they don't go out of our focus, off our radar at all. We continue to keep wherever they're going to go. Ideally, we try to intercept the drugs before they get here. So we do have a lot of success. We're aware of some couriers that are coming into Leamington by different ways, and we can intercept them far beyond the boundary lines of Leamington. So the information that we're getting is never compromised. So it's an impact for that organization, but they are built to withstand extreme due diligence by the police. We are built to withstand whatever it is that they're going to continue to try to do until we can try to collapse those various segments of these criminal enterprise crimes and try to certainly curb the drugs, for sure.
So follow up, what is it going to take to make a bigger impact? We want to really get out and make an impact. What does it take? Does it take more manpower? Does it take more community involvement? What does it take?
That's you're dead on. It is community engagement. That's what it takes. It needs the community to be working with us and providing that information in a timely manner. It's great that individuals will reach out to yourself, and they should, and you want to have that conversation. But that type of information, it's perishable. It's perishable intelligence. If we don't have the ability to action that immediately and we receive it at a later point and to tell us about it, sometimes it could be a missed opportunity for us. We want to educate people. You know, how are we able to address some of the other issues that we're doing, you know, with mental health and with our traffic issues and educating people in different formats. The whole purpose of a fine is only to change a person's behavior. So we know in the drug culture, people don't steal here. They don't commit property crimes because they're hungry. Other communities, they do. They don't do that here. They do it because they have a dependency. So we've got to fully understand and continue to focus our resources on those high-level organizations that will continue to profit by that. People talking to us all the time, directed patrol, Brian has called it, like focus patrol, knowing where to be at the right time. I wish we had a crystal ball. I really do, to know exactly to be where, but within the last 7 days, it was 8:30 in the morning, I'm at my desk. There's an officer by himself going through one of your alleys in Leamington. I heard him call for another car, which would be the norm. So what he had confronted 2 drug dealers, actively involved in the sale of drugs. He was successful in arresting both of those people. In the process, he was viciously assaulted. Do we put those things in the paper? No, we don't. Does that stop the officers from being able to know the law, articulate the grounds that they have to? Because if they don't get it right the first time, we are impacted by some very significant lawsuits. We can do everything right anyways, and we're still going to get sued. I understand that. But that still impacts us because the bad guys, so to speak, know what type of walls they can kind of put up. But again, we have those resources, and we're going to continue to put those resources in this particular area. And to say that we're going to, for me to say any more would be revealing things that I'm not permitted under law to talk about.
I have Councillor Jacobs next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess in a roundabout way, in my feelings is I think we're just touched the tip of the iceberg here. I think we're neglecting to realize that Leamington is no longer, as Councillor Wilkinson was saying, that he can go uptown with his kids. We're a mini city now. Everything is happening in Leamington. We have social services here now, which everyone traveled to Windsor before. We have the Walmarts, we have the Canadian Tires, we have the activity. Most of all, there's a lot of money in this particular area. So I really feel that you guys have a hell of a job ahead of you. You know, I think you're doing a great job now, but on the other side of the coin is the fact that we're going to increase with what we're seeing today, simply because we're growing and we're growing quickly. This isn't the little town that we all grew up in before. This isn't the little hamlet down the street. We're a mini city. I mean, look at the population and look what we're attracting here in Leamington. So I guess my only statement is that, you know, I guess I look forward and I have faith in you guys that with the services that you're providing, and I know as you're stating, Inspector, that a lot of the going on aren't really made public on an everyday paper. You know, like I know there's a lot of work that's being done behind the scenes by your staff and so forth. And, you know, I hope you continue. I don't know, as Councillor Deason is saying, do we need more staff to deal with this? I think we're going to have to in the future, simply because of the explosions that are going on around here with the different type of individuals that are now coming to this town, because we're attracting them here. And that's, I guess, in a sense, that's what we're trying to do all along. We want to grow, we want to be prosperous, but with that comes the negativity of some of the situations that we see taking place. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. Gentlemen, both of you are going to know about our institution here at the corner of Russell and Fox here in Leamington Lodge. It's a fact. Our emergency services, fire for instance, is over there an incredible amount of times, which I'm sure brings police most times. Leamington Lodge has been a consistent, another hotspot complaint I've been hearing about since I started my job here. If you don't mind, for me, I look at that, if I was, you know, a fellow like yourself, Glenn, you know, I'd be reaching out to the financial providers of this facility, which is the county. I don't know what type of correspondence you have going on there, but it's no secret in this town that we need improvement. I feel terrible for the residents around Fox Street, Russell Street, everybody over in that urban area. They've really been suffering for years as a result of, I'm going to leave it at that. But that's a fact, you know, to say that our emergency services are over there constantly. And I know that brings you as well. I think you need to speak about that facility here tonight, please.
Thank you, Councillor. Coming to Leamington, that's one of the locations that's come to my attention with respect to what's going on, and so I do have an understanding with respect to some of the issues there. I am going to look into it as well too, and one of the things, and I spoke about it earlier, and I do think it's not a single approach. It has to be a collaborative approach with all the partners. If we don't all work together, and it's got to be a community initiative, we're not going to be able to address it. So one of the things I'm looking at is getting that partnership together. And once we have that partnership together, begin to talk about how we can then address all the issues that come along with that. Because if you just do the enforcement component, all you're going to do is push things away or temporarily put it on hold. But if we're looking at a long-term solution, it has to be a community initiative with everybody at the table. So that's kind of what my view is, being the new person coming in, taking a look at it, and having a resolve to work towards developing some type of a long-term solution. Do I have the answer today? I would be remiss if I don't have the answer. But what I have learned through my experience in terms of regular issues such as this that continue until everyone comes to the table, we really can't find that solution. So to me, it's engaging those partners and now sitting down and having those conversations with respect to it and start working from there.
And thank you. But our residents over in that area have been impacted by that place for going on, I don't know, 8 to 10 years at least, where it's been a real hotspot situation. You know, that's not the answer they want to hear, where it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. They want immediate action at this facility. It's numero uno in this town, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to, you know, police action that needs to happen. Close behind that's Tier 2 marijuana, and I'm hoping that you'll both speak to Tier 2 marijuana and the side effects on our town, whether it be organized crime, the challenges that you're facing with Tier 2 marijuana.
I'll just step back into your first part of your question. Another element that we're doing, and again, it's important. The police are often asked what we're going to do about this, and that's why with what the government is asking for now is that what is the community going to do with it as well and working with us. So that's why we like that collaboration and that discussion for sure. One of the other things that I did about a year ago, you know, why do people that own these properties allow things to continue? Why? It's for profit. It's for money. So we engaged our proceeds of crime people under civil remedies. Those individuals have been served notice that if there is that opportunity, we will legally take that property. Legally take that property. And we can do that under certain legislation. Is it a lot of work? It is. We have an individual that is assigned to that from another area. That person that it wasn't very happy, of course, when they were served with that particular order, but we hadn't really gone and done that before. May that happen? It's hard to say. But as each event goes on, we're looking at all those different things that are certainly taking place. The officers do proactively go into that location. I'm sure it's not the best location because of healthcare issues and everything else, but they do. They're not shy of going in. That's part of their job in order certainly to go and do that. So just moving into the marijuana. The marijuana legislation, I'm not saying that the legislation is complex, but boy, what a culture shift for policing. What a culture shift for the community. And I'm sure as a council, when you have to make various decisions, both Brian and I and all the officers have committed our life to going after individuals that have actively sold and distributed and transported cannabis marijuana. So now there's a legal part to it, and there's an illegal part to it. The illegal part is something that we now have it's called a green team. It's called a provincial green team. They were in your town last week. And we're looking at those elements that are able to kind of pair off the illegitimate portion of marijuana that's grown down in this area and then sell it on the underground economy. So if a person was to purchase marijuana for $10 from the government, conceivably, people can now purchase it on the underground for $7 or $8 an hour. So that's now where our focus is on those individuals. We're aware of the various marijuana illegal grows that are in place, and we have to get the information from Health Canada to validate that if they're supposed to have 5,000 plants, if they have 6,000 plants, Are you going to stand with us in taking the additional 1,000 plants from them and get a destruction order and then lay that particular charge? So we're doing that on each particular case from a higher level. The volume of illicit drug trafficking is significant, without a doubt. Is it more significant than other areas this size? I would say because it's so lucrative down here, it's such a great area in order to grow things. And as a farmer told me, you know, I can maybe grow poinsettia plants, and if I'm going to make more money than poinsettia plants, then that's what I'm going to grow, or tomatoes. But if I can grow marijuana, I'm going to do my best to follow all the rules. So the rules are really strict and rigid. So now, those individuals that are licensed, they're contacting the police to report on the other individuals within your community that they have knowledge of as to engaged in the illegal activity, because that feeds the underground economy. And it doesn't all stay in Leamington. It doesn't. It's actually going out to other parts of Ontario as well. We want Leamington to be known as a place that grows amazing food, and certainly now legalize medicinal marijuana for sure. But there is that other elements, and we work with the resources that we have available from the government. We pull in other agencies to work with us, because as large as we are, we can never do this alone, because it requires a lot of expertise that we've received from other areas of the province and the country to deal with this. So our focus is on that as well.
I would think we are very unique, since we are the greenhouse mecca of Canada, you know. We do have a fantastic way of growing things around here. I think that's what would make us very unique. And please, I encourage the OPP to commit more resources to our area for the Tier 2 problem, because it's burning up our phone lines here, you know, with constant complaints about it. So please, we'd like to see more action like we seen last week.
Good. And Councilman, please tell those individuals that are talking to you to talk to us. Thank you.
Is that it for you, Counselor? Well, I think we'll move on, if you don't mind, for the moment. Counselor Hammond, I have you next.
Your Worship, thank you. Gentlemen, Inspector Miller and Staff Sergeant Johnson, I think it's really important, and I thank you for being here tonight. I'm really pleased to hear some of the questions asked by my fellow councilors, and it sounds like there's going to be more to come. I think this format is well overdue or long overdue, and I hope, and we all can encourage each other to do this again and again. Because of the information sharing that you're giving us tonight, of course, is being televised, and people get to hear that normally don't. But one thing I quickly learned in the 2 or 3 meetings that I've attended on the Police Association, and I see we have 3 other members in our audience that are on the committee as well, is that, you know, we as councillors believe that we have an understanding of the severity of our, the opioid problem in our community, but we don't. We as councillors, I think, feel that we have an idea about the severity of mental illness in our community, but we don't. We as councillors believe that we have a feel for how much crime is committed in our community, but we don't. But one thing I think that we can say or put our finger on is that we have the pulse of the people of the community and what their perception is of the OPP. And as Councilor Wilkinson alluded to, that, you know, during our, and we all campaigned, we hear a lot that you never see them, you never hear from them. And I think that's in a big part due to the undercover work and all the work you're doing behind the scenes that they don't get to see or hear. The relationship that we have between the municipality and the OPP is that we pay you for a service and you provide the service. We certainly can't suggest as to how that service should be rendered, or we can't begin to suggest or make any comments about whether we think the service is good or bad, or whether you're doing it right or wrong, because we don't know. But one thing I will ask, and I don't expect us to go back to the old days of, when we had a local police force, they were knocking on all the merchants' doors at night and calling them up and say, by the way, your door is unlocked. We'll never go back to that, and we understand that. But one thing that I think that we all would like to hear and see, and again, it comes down to priorities and cost and all of those things, is what we saw on Friday at the local market uptown. Police officers walking the streets, shaking hands and engaging with some of our community members. And I've had, as much as you normally hear, the negative comments concerning, what they're not seeing, I heard some positive comments, and they really appreciated the fact, and Inspector or Staff Sergeant Johnson, if that's your doing, that I encourage more of that. And we've talked in the past about possibly when our bank theater gets up and running, having more patrols or more foot presence at that time, and we're supposed to let you know when that's going to take place, and those things we thank you for. And I want you to appreciate that. We're doing the best we can, Inspector, with respect to the limited knowledge that we have of what your job really entails. But again, if there is a way that without putting too much restraint on all those other activities that you're talking about, that we can have more police presence in town, either walking the streets or bicycles or whatever, I ask that you do that. And I think that the members of this community will also ask that you do more of that as well.
Well, thank you for your comments, Councillor Hammond. And all I can say at this point is, for me, is being a new member of the community. And for me, it's just taking in and listening to what the issues are, what are the concerns, and I'm hearing those concerns. And what that does now, it allows me to prioritize going forward to be able to help to address those issues. And I do recognize what's important, and I can't answer all your questions today as I would like to, because for me it's about getting the information, getting an understanding what the issues are, and then being able to address those issues and be in a position the next time to come and say to you, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing, this is what's working, this is what's not working, and how we all can work together to be able to address some of those issues. So I understand the high visibility, and we're working on that, and I recognize that from feedback that I've received. I understand the issue with the opioid crisis, and that is a concern of myself as well too. So for me, it's about working with not only locally with our provincial partners as well too, to begin to come up with some strategies to address that as well too. So for me, it's a multi-pronged approach in terms of dealing with that and understanding that. So for me, today, it's very much a learning component for me to really understand and to hear and be able to provide you some positive feedback going forward in terms of how we're trying to address some of those issues, and give you information on trends and what's happening out there. And I recognize that. So you understand what's happening in the community and how we're addressing that. So I thank you very much. I thanked all of Council for sharing that with me and enlightening me in terms of some of the unique issues that face this community, some of which I knew, and this provides me with a level of clarification. And I can assure you I'll bring that back to our members and ensure that we continue to address those issues going forward.
Just give me a moment, Deputy Mayor. I'd like to speak right now because I totally disagree with you, Councillor Hammond. I believe we as a council have every right to ask certain things from our police service. And quite frankly, if they are not willing to give it to us, then we find another service. I'm going to play bad cop tonight because I don't agree with that. Last night I went to Tim Hortons to have a coffee with a friend. Somebody said, "Oh, is that our mayor?" I said, "Yes, it is." And she said to me, "I need to tell you something. There is a crack house," and she gave me the address. "My daughter is constantly being pulled into that. You need to help me." Said nothing to do with the campaign. This was a mother in my face asking me for help. We have every reason to ask for that. And if you as a police force are not going to deliver, I'm looking for somebody else who can. I'm going to tell you what I believe you need to look for and to prepare for when we have a report brought to this council that's going to tell us whether or not we need to put out an RFP to look for another force. First of all, you mentioned our lockups. I'd like to know what our lockup numbers are in comparison to other communities. 600 is a lot of lockups. I want to know what Tecumseh has, excuse me. I want to know what Kingsville has, Essex, Lakeshore. Because if our numbers are anywhere near double them, I expect that we have more police complement than what these communities are getting. Because then to me, we have a city and we have city problems. We do not have small town problems. I don't care about traffic to the degree I care about crime like drug enforcement, prostitution, and human trafficking. I want to know what the comparators are, and I would really like to know those numbers, whether you bring them to Police Services Board or whether you bring them to us when we're ready to look at the possibility of an RFP. CORE. I love CORE. I've met the two officers. They are all about Leamington. This is exactly what we need. But I'm only seeing two, and I know that they don't work 7 days a week. So my question is, what happens on the days they're off? I'm assuming they're 4 on, 4 off. Gives us half a week of CORE. Are those officers pulled out when there's an issue somewhere else? And I don't need any answers tonight. I want you to think about these, and at some point in time, like I said, whether it's at Police Services Board or in front of this council, because all of these council members should be wanting to know the answers to these questions as well. Councillor Hammond was happy with one officer on market night. I wasn't happy with one. First of all, there's anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 people in that market in those hours. One officer just isn't good enough. We need more. We had an element from that establishment on the corner going in behind the booths and trying to distract the people with booths. Those people could have anywhere from a couple of hundred to over $1,000. No one was watching them. Our security people that we hire, they have no idea what kind of element is in this town. And that's when we need our police officers on the job. We need two. One is not going to cut it. Whether it means we pay more, we're asking you for this. And if you want to continue, I suggest that we see numbers, that we see boots on the ground. We are not small town. We need to have a police force that knows how to fight crime, that knows how to deal with big cities. We ain't the Leamington of 1965. And then I'd like to know what the full complement is for Leamington. I would like that figure at some point in time. I would like to know if we are at full complement. And if we're not, what is the number? Do we have 6? Do we have 5? Or do we have 1? I was a little bit concerned that one officer got beat up. So I'm wondering, where are the rest? We need to know those figures. Actually, you owe us those figures. And I don't want smoke blown. I want actual hard numbers. What are we paying for? And if those officers are not here, are they in Tecumseh, where the lockup numbers are a third of ours? Are they in Kingsville, where they're a quarter of ours? We need to know this. We have a right to know this. This is our community. If they can't do the job, we have to find somebody that's going to do the job. And obviously right now, we're not getting that. Zero tolerance. Even zero tolerance for speeding. We read an article in the paper and online. LaSalle Police Services bumped up their speeding, going after speeders, and they had positive great numbers, and they reduced it. They had data to prove it. We need data. I don't want just stories. I want data to find out what we're getting for the money we're paying. This is the biggest part of our budget that we are paying. If that's the most of our money that our taxpayers are paying, then we better have good results, or we have to go somewhere else like shopping. If I don't get a bang for my buck when I go to the grocery store, man, oh man, I'm going somewhere else. You need to listen to these people, giving us And I'm not saying you're giving us excuses, but giving us pat answers isn't working anymore. We're fighting for the life of this town. It is no longer what it used to be. What's okay in Kingsville, in Essex, is not okay here. That's pretty much it for me. But as Councillor Wilkinson said, we all heard it. I'm not giving you compliments when I don't think compliments are due, and quite honestly, they aren't. If they were, we wouldn't be hearing this from our people. We as councillors get caught, I tell this to administration as often as I can, we get caught between theory and practicality. We know what practical wisdom is, what not boots on the ground, what people on the ground are experiencing. They're not liking what they're experiencing. Consequently, we're feeling it, and now we need to tell you, this ain't good enough. It has to be better. This, to me, is a warning to you. I know you expected this to just be an information, but I'm telling you, we are serious here. I can't take any of those words back, and I can't give you any compliments, because right now, I want my community to be a better place. I want to be sitting up here at the end of these 4 years and saying, job well done to you, job well done to my colleagues, because we made you toe the line. No apologies. Sorry, gentlemen. Sometimes the rubber has to meet the road. Sometimes the truth has to be told. Sometimes you have to be a bad cop. But this is near and dear to my heart. I'm not in a position to just take okay for an answer, or it'll get better, or there, young lady, it's fine. It ain't fine. It needs to be better. We all have promised people to do better. We're expecting you to do better as well. Deputy Mayor. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I got to get these comments in. Well, the mayor's already done it. Yes, again, I was going to disagree with you there, Councillor Hammond. We can be critical of these guys, of the OPP, and I think we need to be. Ultimately, we answer to the public, and that's campaign promises that we made, that we were going to be critical of our police force, whether it be OPP, whether it be whoever. We can be critical of them. We should be. That's nothing personal against these fellas. I've heard great things about both these individuals in front of us. They're good guys. But we can be critical of what we see, the product that we receive. The mayor took two of my thoughts here. The staffing issue is one I was going to bring up. It seems like it's known that we have our staff pulled away to go to other parts of the county. She's wanting to report on that. She's already mentioned that. That's a concern we've heard over the years, that we are left understaffed in Leamington when we need the focus in our town. The second thing is from our uptown merchants, and I got to get these comments in. Yes, we have seen the core action, and that is welcomed. But what one very reputable merchant said to me today, he said, I don't need to see them on Mondays. I don't need to see them on Tuesdays. I need to see them Thursday, Friday, Saturday. From 4 o'clock to about 10 o'clock is about the witching hours. It's the same thing I've been saying about the speeding in the south end of Leamington, on Erie Street, Robson Road, Cherry, Robson Road, Bevel Line. These things are consistently happening, fellas, from about, it seems like 5 o'clock in the afternoon up till 9 o'clock at night. But it's so consistent, and I have been putting in the calls over the years. It's gotten to the point where, I sound like a broken record when people complain to me. I say, do you call in? It's great that you call me, but did you call the police? And they're like, I kind of give up on it after a while. They feel like it's having no effect. If we know that there's speeding going on every night in the south end, it just makes sense to me that I would see a cruiser down there, a heavy police cruiser presence, or a blitz, something like that, like what LaSalle has done. That was impressive. That's what I mean when I say I want to be impressed. I was impressed when the police were in town there last week. I look at it, fellas, as you got the summer to impress me. You do. The contract is coming up here, I think, in December. And yes, I think we need to be impressed. The community expects it. I look forward to you coming back with these reports that the mayor's requested.
Councillor Hammond.
Thank you. I just want to get something straight here. I don't think that I said I was patting them on the back for the job well done. I don't think I was being critical either. All I said was, I don't think we totally understand all of the problems we have with opioids, the problem with mental illness, the problem with a bunch of other things. And I did comment about the fact that there were 2 officers downtown on Friday night, that I thought that they did a good job doing that. I heard good comments about that, and I wanted to see more of that. That's what I said. I didn't say that I was being flattering. I didn't mention anything about being critical. That's what I said.
Well, with that, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your attendance, and we'll see you again. Moving on to Shannon Bello for the LPCC, Leamington Police, or Leamington Pollution Control Center Generator Upgrades and Tender Award.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. The purpose of this report is for Council to authorize administration to award the generator upgrade project for the Leamington Pollution Control Plant to Holler Mechanical. The plant currently has 2 emergency generators which are used to provide backup power to the plant in the event of a power failure. One of the generators was installed in 2002 and the other was installed in 2009. Both of the generators service different parts of the plant, but they both are equipped with similar materials. They both have outdoor diesel fuel storage tanks, internal day tanks, fuel pumps, and exhaust systems. Following a request in 2018, the municipal fuel supplier reported to us that both of the generators exhibited items of noncompliance with the new Technical Standards and Safety Authority standards. Fuel suppliers are no longer permitted to fill fuel tanks if the system isn't in compliance with the TSSA standards. As a result of that, they would no longer provide fuel to the plant. Administration worked with Dillon Consulting to develop design drawings and tender the project to bring the generators into compliance. The project was tendered in May, and 2 submissions were received. One submission was non-compliant and was rejected, and Holler's submission was compliant. However, the price was much higher than we had anticipated. As a result of that, administration met with Dillon and Holler to review the tender pricing, and we were able to remove 2 items deemed to be non-critical to the project, as well as adjust equipment pricing. Although the price remains higher than the 2019 budget, administration is recommending awarding the project to Holler. There is an urgency to bring these 2 systems into compliance to avoid compromising the plant in the event of a power failure, and also to allow operations to resume routine testing of these generator systems, which is required by the manufacturer. There is an option to cancel this tender and re-tender the work. However, that will only delay completing the project and doesn't always guarantee better pricing. To compensate for the additional funding that is required for the project, administration is proposing to reallocate funds from the Maintenance Building Expansion Capital Project, which will no longer be proceeding in 2019. Earlier in March of 2019, an RFP for the building expansion design and tender was issued. 3 submissions were received, and after reviewing those design, tendering, and construction costs, we canceled the RFP. The cost for design, tendering, and construction would have been more than double our capital budget, and we decided at that point that there was the point for the storage building was no longer warranted. We may pursue looking at an independent storage structure in the future, which would stay within the budget that we would have remaining. The generator upgrades project is approved in the PCC 2019 capital budget at a value of $110,000. The project costs between Holler and the engineering costs will result in a deficit in the capital account of approximately $91,000. The negative variance again is recommended to be funded from the Maintenance Building Expansion Capital Project. Utilizing these funds will still leave a balance of approximately $160,000 for the construction of an independent storage structure if we decide to move forward. In closing, the recommendation before Council are to authorize administration to award the generator upgrades contract to Holler in the amount of $172,700, and that the deficit of $90,670 be funded from the Maintenance Building Expansion Capital Project. And finally, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Are there any comments or questions? Deputy Mayor.
Mayor, thanks. Through you to Shannon, is there been any looking at possibly a natural gas generator so we wouldn't have this problem in the future?
We haven't done that currently. I don't know. I would have to look back and see if that was something that was considered at the time and what the result of that was in 2009 when the most recent one was put in. Back in 2002, I don't think natural gas was out on the market as much for generators as it is now. Unfortunately, I just don't know if there was something looked at in 2009, and I could look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. And further, I guess, so it doesn't matter if you're going to get back, this is what we're getting if we approve this, right?
There would be, additional cost to outfit them. We would have to buy whole new generator sets instead of doing the upgrades to these units and then outfitting for natural gas. We didn't look at the cost of that, unfortunately, so I can't answer that.
Mr. Sharon, did you want to speak to that?
Your Worship, only that the decision to select natural gas or diesel powered generators, the time to make that decision is when you're purchasing the generators. And we could always explore it at this time, but I guarantee to council that the cost would be substantially more than we're talking about now, simply to upgrade the tanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'll add to that, sorry. It did actually come up at one of the pumping stations more recently. And in talking about it at that point, it was decided to go with diesel fuel because if there was a natural disaster and we didn't have access to natural gas as well, diesel fuel is always readily available. So that could have been the same decision that was made back at that point.
Okay. Are you satisfied with that?
Yes, as long as your tanks are in compliant.
With that, I have Councillor Dunn next.
Sure, Madam Mayor. First of all, Shannon, my question is regarding the first tender, why it was not compliant.
There were documents missing that were not submitted. They did not submit their bid bond. They did not submit WSIB, and one of the forms was not signed.
And through the RF process, now after the fact, you've gone to the second, or the one that you approved that had everything in place, and had it readjusted so that you get it to the price that you need it to be, or a little closer to the price that we need to be. Is there, during the RF process, can we go back to that first one that was non-compliant and say you're missing documents, or that's just not acceptable, or is that not a part of the legal end of that?
Rob, sorry.
No, that's okay. It's a good question, Councillor, through Your Worship. One of the few benefits of only having one bidder on a particular tender is that it does give us a little bit more flexibility to sit and negotiate with that particular tenderer, because we're not necessarily going to run into issues where another bidder in that process can claim that we've materially changed the scope of that tender and it's a different tender and they're not given the same advantages. When you go through these tender processes and someone closes a tender, you've entered into a contract with them, typically referred to as Contract A. So you have legal obligations to them. Such is not the case when someone is a non-compliant bidder. And so we don't have the ability to go back and try and get that first bidder compliant such that we can then, sit and negotiate with them. Our ability to negotiate to this degree is because there was only one bid.
Councillor Thiessen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the issue that I've got with this is, so we hired Dillon, an engineering firm, a rather reputable firm, to engineer it and come up with a price for our budget. We pass a budget of $90,000, and then they come in at $264 for the actual price. Somebody really dropped the ball here. And do we need to look at Dillon and say, where did you pull that price out of? Like, I realize that they then went back, and then they go back and they pull stuff out. Well, if we didn't need it in the first place, why was it in there? But to go from 90,000 to 264, to me, that's just too big an error. And maybe we need to look at Dillon and, or maybe look elsewhere to an engineering firm who can get it even if they were 50% closer would be better. When we're trying to set a budget in December or in January this year, that's pretty hard then to come back to us and say, well, you're going to have to pay double for that equipment. Just a comment.
I can comment on that. Dillon was not involved before the budgeting process. When this came up in 2018, we contacted we tried to contact multiple companies to come out and provide us with quotes for the work. We were successful in getting 2 companies out, and that is where the $90,000 budget came from, was those 2 site visits. So that was the value that we carried, and then we added additional funds for the consultant, knowing that I think we retained them at the end of 2018. So the 90,000 was based on quotes that we received. However, because it was over the 40K, we had to go through the tendering process. Once Dillon came on site, there were additional things that were identified that were not in the initial quotes that we had. So there were additional items that were added to the tender and the form of tender that we issued to the public. In addition to that, one of the biggest items that precluded to the $264,000 was the fact that we didn't consider having to provide a backup generator for the first generator that we have at the plant that services the lower screw pumping station. So that was never included in that $90,000, and it came up at the time when we were reviewing it with Dillon. If there was a significant failure and those screw pumps were not operating, then it would put the town, at a huge liability. So the cost of supplying a generator was added in the tendering process. Now, having said that, we have come up with an alternative method to doing this so that we don't need a temporary generator, and that was where the majority of the reduction in cost came from.
Further?
So just further to that then, would it not have been possible then to do the work that was originally identified and then come back next year after the next budget and continue or to finish up the work, or does it all need to be done at the same time?
It all needs to be done or they still won't fill our tanks. At the conclusion of the process, an oil burner technician has to come in and certify that everything is up to code. And then once we have that report and basically a stamp on it, then they will come and fill our tanks. So without doing it all at once, we still wouldn't get any fuel.
You're fine? So the recommendation is out there, moved by Councillor Jacobs, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. The Asphalt Tender Program, Gaspar.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The 2019, I just recommended that the 2019 asphalt program be awarded to Millamp Corporation in the amount of $388,110.23 plus applicable taxes. Annually, the municipality completes road maintenance projects that include crack sealing, tar and chip, resurfacing, and asphalt milling and paving. In 2019, a review of local roads was completed. A dozen roads were rated at 6 out of 10. Some of those roads were local roads and some were collector roads. We proposed to pave local roads and some were collector roads. We propose to pave the collectors this year and may consider paving local roads in 2020 after the 2020 review and rating is completed. In rating a road, it's based on visual inspection, surface cracking, rideability, edge cracking, heaving, and the settlement of manholes. Subject tender includes for the milling, paving, and minor curb repairs of the following road segments. They were Alderton Street from Rudgate to Benny, Benny Avenue from Oak Street to Alderton, Orange Street from Elizabeth to Worcester, and Worcester Avenue from approximately Mill Street to the cul-de-sac. On June 19, 2019, the municipality received 2 tender submissions from area contractors with tender summaries shown in Table 1. Milam Corporation has worked for the municipality in the past and has performed well. Milam Corporation, their tender amount or submission was $394,941, including net HST. And Coco Paving was $482,043, including net HST. The post-tendering costs for the 2019 surface treatment programs are estimated at $399,941 and will be charged to the account the road surfacing budget. The project remains on budget as identified in Table 2, with the remaining funds to be used for rural road rehabilitation as intended. Any questions?
Thank you, sorry, thank you, Gaspar. Are there any questions? Councillor Thiessen.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Gaspar, you had mentioned the rural roads. When did you say that those would be looked at, or?
Those have been tendered. We're just waiting for this to wrap up to see if there's any money left over in order to extend some of the works on that.
Okay.
It did go out. We closed.
Okay, I would suggest we also look at the rural roads and maybe keep them in the budget as well. I hate for all the money to be, rural residents are asking for roads to be looked at, and that all I ever hear is all that ever gets done is work in the town and nothing on the rural areas. So that's just a comment.
I believe, yeah, yearly we do a few rural roads and a few municipal roads. I know we're tar and chipping a few roads this year, as well as 2019. Like I said, we've got a couple roads that have been out to tender and have closed. We're just finalizing the numbers.
Just a comment, if I may, about the tar and chipping and the rural roads. I know one in particular that was done. There's one resident at the end of it in that road. Actually, the only other person that goes down there dumps grass in the ditches anyways. But there's very little traffic on that one. But I would just, let's not forget the rural roads, because there are some that are in very poor shape. Thank you.
What is your wish with that motion? Since you're the country official voice on paved roads. No, it's good. This is why you're here, Councillor. We need representation from all aspects of our community. It was not a critical remark. You're all just a little tender from my tirade.
And I don't take it as such.
Okay, that's good to know. So moved by Councillor
But I will move
Thiessen.
it. Let's just not forget the rural area.
We won't forget, will we, Gaspar? We're on the rural.
They're next.
Okay, there you go. Seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. And yes, Deputy Mayor, you are also the rural representative. Don't worry. Now we're moving on to the telecommunications broadcasting tower, the letter of concurrence. Danielle, if you don't mind. Ms. Truax.
Thank you, Mayor McDonald, members of council. Rogers Communications have submitted a information package for a proposed new cell tower at 645 Highway 77. So that is one of the Nature Fresh properties. It's located just north of Gord's Abattoir. So that's the property we're dealing with. As council is aware, telecommunication towers are not subject to the Ontario Building Code or the Planning Act. However, proponents are required to consult with municipalities as well as provide notice in accordance with the Industry Canada Protocol for considering cell towers. So Rogers has provided us with a project overview for the proposed tower. It is to be a 200-foot lattice tower. It'll be ground level with a concrete pad with a fenced compound, and it'll be located in the southwest corner of the property, and it's shown just with that little green star on the key map. This tower is being proposed in order to address a coverage deficiency in the area. The site plan that was submitted in the information package was circulated to our Development Support Committee. Upon review, we noted that there were no concerns of municipal interest. We also looked at whether it would have any impact on the stormwater management approval for the approved greenhouse on this site, as well as the fire access route. This is the wood chip storage location on the property. There were no concerns with either of those. The applicant has also advised that they have notified the Ministry of Transportation as well as Hydro One with respect to this property. As part of the protocol, they are required to do a similar circulation as we do with our public meetings. They were required to provide notice to property owners within 600 feet as well as publish in a local newspaper. That notice advised that anyone with comments or concerns must submit those to Rogers by June 30th. They've now indicated that no comments or concerns were received from the public. It's administration's opinion that the proposed tower is suitable for the following reasons. It has no impact to the natural heritage or environment. It's suitable in the agricultural area. It will not impede the use for permitted uses in the area. It will not impede the use of the abutting municipally owned property, the trail on the west side of the property. It is an appropriate distance from property lines, as well can be accessed appropriately through easements, and it is outside of any traffic sight lines. There were no relevant public concerns. The recommendation before council this evening is that administration be directed to issue the requested letter of concurrence.
Thank you, Danielle. I understand we have representatives from both Rogers as well as Nature Fresh here. Welcome. So, council, do you have questions of Danielle or of the representatives? Moved by Councillor Thiessen, seconded by Councillor Hammond. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Danielle. Moving on to the applications for sign variance. Ms. Orton.
The municipality has received 2 applications for variances from the provisions of the sign bylaw from the Leamington Mennonite Home and Apartments. The applications relate to 1 and 2 Pickwick Drive. In connection with 1 Pickwick Drive, the location and appearance of the sign proposed to be erected is within appendices 2 and 3 of the report. The property is zoned within the residential zone. The sign bylaw indicates that signs on lands used for residential purposes is prohibited, except for signs with a maximum sign area of 32.3 square feet. The proposed sign is 36.7 square feet, which exceeds the permitted area. The applicant has provided the following submission in support of the variance, which is requested to erect a ground sign to beautify the main entrance to the Leamington Mennonite Home community. The sign will help emergency service vehicles locate the area more quickly and act as a marker for other visiting community members. If council permits the application for a variance to the sign bylaw, the applicant will also require a minor variance to obtain relief from the zoning bylaw related to the minimum required front yard setback and the minimum required exterior side yard setback. An application for that minor variance has been submitted. In connection with 2 Pickwick Drive, the location and appearance of the sign is shown within appendices 4 and 5 of the report. The proposed sign is located within a site triangle of this corner lot, and that is prohibited within the sign bylaw. The applicant has provided the following submission, again in support of this variance. The sign variance is requested to again erect a ground sign to beautify the main entrance to the Leamington Mennonite Home community. The sign is designed to be as low as possible to minimize obstruction of view. The location is the only possible location on the property, and again, it will help emergency vehicles locate the area more quickly and act as a marker for other visiting community members. Council again permits this application for a variance to the sign bylaw. The applicant also requires a minor variance to obtain relief from the zoning bylaw to reduce the minimum front yard setback, reduce the minimum exterior side yard setback, and reduce the size of the site visibility triangle for the sign. The zoning bylaw indicates that no structure can be within the triangular space included between the street lines for a distance of 9 meters from the point of intersection. The applicants are asking for a reduction to 8.85 meters. This application for the minor variance has been received. Administration is recommending that the variances to the sign bylaw be conditionally approved based on the following. The sign at 1 Pickwick Drive minimally exceeds the maximum sign area allowed and will protect and enhance the aesthetic qualities and visual character of the municipality. In connection with 2 Pickwick Drive, the sign is placed in the area of the property to minimize site triangle encroachment and has been designed with a height of 1.79 feet, which is not anticipated to obstruct the view of a driver approaching the intersection. So the recommendation is, first, that council approve the application for a variance to the sign bylaw received from the Leamington Mennonite Home and Apartments for 1 Pickwick Drive on the condition that the applicant is granted a minor variance reducing the required front yard and exterior side yard setback. And secondly, that council approve the application for a variance to the sign bylaw received from the Leamington Mennonite Home and Apartments for 2 Pickwick Drive on the condition that the applicant is granted a minor variance reducing the required front yard, exterior side yard setbacks, and reducing the size of the site visibility triangle.
Thank you, Ms. Orton. I have a question starting with Councillor John Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Ruth, the only question I have in this is the, excuse me, the site triangle is, like, we're going to reduce the width from the road and so forth. Is engineering comfortable with this, or, like, do we anticipate that any, I guess, obstructions will show out of this? Because I'm concerned about the amount of the drivers that are in that particular area.
I understand that engineering has submitted comments to the planning department in connection with the minor variance. I don't anticipate that those comments would result in administration not recommending the minor variance be granted. However, that is the reason that the recommendation within this report suggests that it be conditional upon the minor variance being granted.
You're welcome. Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Ruth, my question is, as I'm looking through here, I notice there's lighting in front of these signs, or what appears to be lighting in front of the signs. Is there a standard by what the brightness of the lighting and all that, some recourse, because it is directed right back at those residents in behind? And I just don't, we approve this sign to go in, and then all of a sudden the lighting goes into place, and it may be shining in the front doors of these, some of these residents. Any recourse for these residents on approval, or is there any certain guidelines we have regarding the I guess the intensity of the light or the direction thereof?
I cannot think of a provision within the property standards bylaw currently in connection with lighting. However, if there is a concern raised by a resident regarding the light, we can certainly address it with the applicant and with the Leamington Mennonite Home. I'm sure they would not want to impact upon their neighbors that way, so we would certainly work with them. And if there are any provisions within a bylaw, we would certainly apply them. So I'll reach out to the Leamington Mennonite Home and ensure that their light is directed so that it's not reflecting within their neighbors.
Appreciate that. I just seen that pointing, and it could be directed, and then it could be very uncomfortable if you have your house is being lit up in the middle of the night, right? Thank you.
Comment, Councillor Thiessen.
What I do like about these signs is that it will identify it as a seniors community, and hopefully will slow down the speeding in that area. There is a fair bit of that going on. And as far as Councillor Dunn, with the lighting, the residents in behind are members or residents of the home, of the corporation, so they would have a direct line, and hopefully that they would all work together. Thank you.
You're welcome. And with that, we have a motion on the floor, a recommendation. Sorry. Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Deputy Mayor. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks, Ruth. Moving on to the limiting distance agreement. Again, Thornton.
This is interesting because it's the second time we've seen one of these agreements come forward in a relatively short period of time. But this is related to a request from the owner of the property located at 43 Mill Street West. And the request is to allow for construction of a building on those lands when the building is contemplated to have windows facing the west. The subject wall of windows in the existing structure located at that address and in the proposed addition is adjacent to the property line with 72 Talbot Street West, which is municipally owned. The diagram is on Appendix 1 to this report. Within the building that the municipality owns at 72 Talbot Street West is the Leamington Arts Center. Both of these properties are in the C1 zone. That zone allows for a 100% maximum lot coverage with no setbacks, and that means that buildings can be constructed on separate parcels such that the walls touch one another. So there's no requirement for a side yard. Let me repeat that.
That was great.
So the building code does require a certain amount of space measured from a window in an exterior wall of a building to the property line, the center line of a street, or another building, and that's referred to as the limiting distance. That distance is calculated based on the size of the windows of subject buildings. The distance may be measured to a point beyond the property line into an abutting property if the owners of properties enter into an agreement with the municipality and register that agreement on the title to both of those properties. In this case, we did receive something called a spatial separation setback report. It was prepared by an engineer, and that report is prepared to provide us with evidence required to permit the application of the building code and that limiting distance agreement. Part of that report has been provided to you at Appendix 2, and you'll see that they have reviewed the size of the windows in the Arts Center, and calculated that based on a percentage. And they've also reviewed the amount of windows in the proposed constructed proposed constructed building on 43 Mill Street West. The distance to the existing and proposed building at that location is 5.5 meters. That would allow for the desired number of windows if a limiting distance agreement is entered into between the parties. That limiting distance agreement really only applies to the area that is closest to the elevator shaft of the Arts Center. So you'll see that on Appendix 1, where the elevator area juts out to the right side of the depiction of the existing art gallery. The limiting distance of 5.5 meters, you can see in red on that drawing, from the corner of the proposed addition at 43 Mill Street West to the dotted red line. You'll see the provisions that are included within the agreement within the report. Probably the most important issue related to the limiting distance agreement is that it does limit the municipality's opportunity to construct any structure on its property within the limiting distance, or make any alterations or additions to the easterly side of the Arts Center, which would include enlarging or adding windows. Now, this could be the case in any event because the municipality also only has its own limiting distance to the property line between 72, and 43. So there would always be some calculations required to be done in the event any construction was to be done to that side of the property. The limiting distance in this case, as I indicated, only affects that small portion of the municipality's property based on the windows to be constructed in the proposed addition. So there is a recommendation that council does authorize the agreement with the owner of 43 Mill Street West to allow the construction of a building with their westerly facing windows. That council authorize the agreement to be registered against the title and encumber the municipality's lands, which are located at 72 Talbot Street West, and that the Director of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute the required documents.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Now, bear with me, Ruth. We did have a little discussion on this. If we go back to the appendage where the library's windows are, the art center's windows, if we remove those windows, we could actually build to the lot line, except for the proposed new addition. And is it just a window in the upper right-hand or upper left-hand corner that's actually the only problem that's causing? So if we were going to extend our building over to the property line, we'd actually have to leave a gap there because of one window?
That's correct. Yes, when you refer to the property line, yes, if you followed the property line, as you can see it on the dark dotted line, and it's identified there, you could only extend to the red dotted line. That's correct.
Now, when I look at this proposed new addition of F2, it looks like an upper window, but is that a lower window as well? On the new proposed? So it's just those two windows that would cause us problem?
That's correct.
I'm not necessarily a fan of this. I understand all the rest of the windows, and I really like the idea of this craft brewery going into place, but I don't want to limit us or tie our hands for future construction when it comes to the Art Center, especially being such an older building and what may come in the future when it comes to access. As somebody said about a receiving bay, or if you need access into the basement with a future elevator or ramp or other things, that caused me a little concern when it comes to that, just those two windows. Everything else seems to be all not an issue, it's just those two windows. Otherwise, we'd have to do construction, and this is in the future. This is something way beyond what we're going to be here for. And to have the building come out and then be dodged back in. So anyway, I'd like to hear what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Dunn. Councillor Hammond brought it to my attention on the weekend here that I really need to tune into this one a little bit closer because of the limitations it's going to put on the LAC. So yes, I did contact our director, Chad, last night. And yeah, he's reviewed it very carefully. He did have concerns. Right now, the LAC is what it is. But that we don't know what's going to come 5, 10, 20 years down the road. There has been a need identified, of course, for a rear loading dock, courier drop-off, rear entrance to the LAC is needed. At the same time, we welcome the new development next door to us at the same time, and we want to be good neighbors, just like we want our new neighbors to be good neighbors with us. Ultimately, he didn't have an objection to it. All I would say is that down the road, 5, 10 years, if we do make improvements to the LAC, we'd have to get, I don't know how that challenge would be met because it makes most sense to butt onto the elevator area is where you'd want to access. But he did review, and he didn't provide any objections. So that's my comments from the LEC at least.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I greatly appreciate Chad being a good neighbor, and I do really appreciate his input, but it's also, like I said, tying our hands later on. How long Chad's going to be there, hopefully forever, you know, way past where we're on here. My point is and it looks just like, if those windows were only moved maybe 5 feet to the right, we wouldn't be having this issue. Did you hear that? If they would just move them 5 feet to the right, those windows, we wouldn't have this issue. There won't be an issue with that. From the diagrams, roughly. I don't know, Ruth, is that?
I can't say that for certain because it is based on a percentage. So the calculation would need to be done. So I wouldn't want to say that just by moving them would solve the problem. The problem may still exist due to the percentage of the unobstructed openings.
But further, and if I may, Madam Mayor, there's other windows on the new proposed addition, and they don't seem to be causing an issue. It is just that one because of the slight angle of the property. And that's why I said if we get back past that angle on the property, we shouldn't have an issue. And then we'd still have open access to that property, building it right straight across.
Councillor Hammond.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it's my understanding that we couldn't have, if we can pull up, well, you've got the right picture up there. We couldn't have added to the east side of the, to the art gallery anyway, and put windows in without keeping a limited distance from the property line anyway. Correct, Ruth, so far?
That is my understanding. Again,
Yes.
without engineered drawings and an assessment to be done, I can't say that for certain. My concern is it could limit the ability to do that.
Yes, but I think we were limited because of the existing building that was already there. I think we were limited to putting an addition, for example, on that east side. The only concern I have is one raised by Councillor Dunn is what Councillor Wilkinson alluded to, that the logical place if you're going to do anything there is to go against the elevator, and that's the area of concern that we have. So it's unfortunate. I thought Mr. Bear would be here this evening, so it kind of puts us and you on an unfair advantage to answer some of these technical questions, because it's my understanding then that we can't do anything with those windows that are currently there. We couldn't have added on to the building because because of the two windows that Councillor Bear or Councillor Dunn had referred to. So it puts us in a difficult spot, I think.
Councillor Thiessen, sorry, got a frog.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is it possible, can we go to Appendix 1? I just want to make sure that I'm following this correctly. Is the issue is the little triangle from the dotted line up to the solid red line. It's a very tiny triangle. Is that not the case? And if we were to add on, would we not be leaving a walkway from Talbot Street to Mill Street for access? So what I'm getting is that area more than likely would remain as a walkway. So I don't know if we're going to be. No, but that's the windows. But what I'm saying is that would probably, even if we did come out, and even if we were able to, that tiny triangle there, I don't think in the future is going to be impeding us adding on to the library, or to the art center, because we would still want an access point, I think, from Talbot Street to Mill Street in that area. But
Councillor Wilkinson.
Just a quick comment to that, Councillor Thiessen. It wouldn't be an add-on we'd be looking for. It'd just be an improvement. I think you'd see something like, I don't know, an access door built in, but would it be physical bricks and mortar coming out? I don't think that would be the case. We'd be looking to, probably punch a proper big door of some sort in there, and possibly another entrance door, so we have access off of Mill Street, which is, but as for physical being built on, I don't think that would be the case.
Well, my colleagues, what do you want to do? I appreciate the discussion. Counselor Dunn.
I appreciate that, Councillor Wilkinson, but it's what we're planning on doing, what you're seeing right now, but this is the future. Well, 10 years down the road, this is new owners have the brewery, or God willing, they stay there forever, but new owners, and then we have a contract in deal, and that we have to now go back and deal with. And it's over 2 windows. I said I'm not in favor of the 2 windows. I don't want to limit us later on.
Rob, Sharon.
Your Worship, we did take a good look at this consideration. The reason, frankly, I see it as having, very little potential future limitation. The separations are there. Essentially, when they do the calculations, it's a factor of distance and your percentage of openings. So as an example, if a large-scale improvement, if we were to somehow try and cram a large-scale improvement into there, we would simply look at the area, the current area of our existing openings and be limited to that. Frankly, when we looked at it, we really didn't see huge concern that if we were going to expand this building, that wouldn't be the place we would do it. Even if that was the place we would do it, we would simply have the architect design it such that the area of openings is equal to the area of openings that it is now. So I don't want council to think that by approving this, we're really tying our hands or encumbering this property with, all sorts of restrictions for lots of future potential growth. Again, I don't really see this area as requiring that. And if somehow in a redevelopment plan or renewal plan of the art center that we wanted to do some works here, we could work within those, the confinements of the existing area of the openings that we have now.
Great, thank you. Tim? Counselor Wilkinson?
I appreciate that, Rob. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable with what he said, as an LAC member as well. So, Rob, don't go anywhere for 25 years. I'm going to hold you to that statement, okay?
Oh, sorry. Counselor Hammond, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I think in the future, there's nothing, if we were to decide to put some large addition on that east side of the Art Center, we could always go back to the owners of the proposed addition and ask them to close in those 2 windows anyway, correct? Whether they agreed to or not is another story, but we could ask them to do that.
All right, what do we want to do? Moved by Counselor Thiessen, seconded by Counselor Jacobs. All in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the Hydro One Networks Incorporated Permanent Easement, and that is you again, Ruth Orton.
The municipality has received a further request from Hydro One to enter into an agreement for an easement for an underground circuit crossing on lands just south of County Road 14, within, again, the former railway lands, now our municipal trail. The location of the proposed easement is shown on the aerial map at Appendix 1. So you'll see it's very small. It's 0.42 acres. The purpose of the proposed easement is to allow Hydro One to construct and maintain a circuit crossing within the subject lands. As the easement is in connection with lands over which an easement has been previously granted to Union Gas, and given the nature of the proposed easement to Hydro One, Union Gas must provide consent to the works proposed by Hydro One. We have requested that Hydro One obtain that consent and provide it to us prior to the execution of the agreement. In connection with the financial impact, again, Hydro One determined the appropriate compensation to be paid to the municipality based on the same formula used in previous easements. In this case, because the area is so small, the consideration is $265. Revenue generated from the previous easements was allocated originally to the waterfront redevelopment reserve and then later to the trails reserve. And it's recommended that these proceeds also be allocated to the trails reserve. Hydro One is responsible for all other costs. So the recommendation is that council approve the agreement to grant the easement to Hydro One Networks for the purchase price of $265. That the Director of Legal and Legislative Services be authorized to execute the relevant documents in a form and at a time as approved by the municipality's solicitor, consistent with the contents of this report, and that the proceeds be allocated to the Trails Reserve.
Thank you, Ruth. Comments, questions, motion moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Dunn. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Moving on to the year-end variance for 2018. And I would imagine that that is Laura Roach.
Thank you, Your Worship. Further to my report earlier this evening regarding the audited financial statements that identified an accumulated surplus of $306 million under PSAB, this report in front of Council tonight is the year-end variance analysis that provides the cash surplus from the levied taxes and fees collected to operate municipal services and invest in infrastructure. So the 2018 tax-funded surplus is $3.95 million, and the recommendations for this surplus are outlined in Schedule 1 of my report, and the details by department are outlined in Schedule 2. Schedule 3 includes the in-year transfers to reserves for projects that were ongoing at the end of the year. These amounts were not included in the 2019 budget. However, during those deliberations, Council provided direction that these 2018 projects that did not exceed the approved funding amounts would be completed. Schedule 4 provides Council with the year-end balances in the reserve and the reserve funds, also compared to budget. At the end of 2018, this balance was $61 million. So the municipality continues to be in a strong financial position with healthy reserve levels. So there are 4 main areas that primarily contribute to the operating surplus. For the most part, these surpluses are externally driven and are difficult to estimate and are not guaranteed revenue sources. Conservative budgeting is a prudent practice to avoid major rate changes in the future. So I'll go through each of those areas. So first is the property tax revenue. So Council will recall that the 2018 budget was brought forward to Council early in December of 2017, included a 1.8% tax rate increase to the municipal levies. At the time, administration was required to estimate the assessment growth as the final information from MPAC was not received. Appropriately, conservative estimating on the assessment growth was 2.5%. When the final information was received, including the updates within the year, or what we refer to as supplemental tax revenue, the municipality realized additional property tax revenue of about $1 million, which is about 3.8% of our total tax levy. Additionally, the municipality realized higher interest income than expected. Timing of cash outflows are difficult to predict, as well as interest rates. In 2018, all municipal investments were held in cash. The third item relates to tax adjustments. Again, a very difficult thing to predict. However, the risk associated with appeals directly impacts the amount collected on properties for years long gone, as well as going forward. Some of these tax appeals that we are currently working on and are reviewing date back to 2009 and are multi-year appeals. So some are 10 years old and within that 10 years. So the new process that the ARB began in 2017 is expected to work through these appeals within the next 1 to 2 years, leaving great exposure for all municipalities. And finally, the other major contributor to the surplus is the sewer department. Less than planned urban drainage works, and again, the tax appeals relating to the urban boundaries and the collection of an oversizing sewer charge make up the surplus. Within the surplus identified in Schedule 1, there are 10 transfers to reserves that administration is recommending for the 2018 surplus. So first, I'll start with the engineering reserve. So there's three components to this 929,000 that we're recommending to be transferred. 500,000 of which relates to the asset deficit. The 2013 asset management plan, as I reported at last council meeting, identified a 6.1 annual deficit when comparing the average funding required versus the average funding available. So to support the life cycle replacement of infrastructure as it relates to roads and bridges, it's recommended that 500,000 be set aside in the engineering reserve for future projects funding. Flooding and shoreline protection is an immediate concern to Leamington. As such, administration is recommending $300,000 be transferred and earmarked for shoreline protection for municipally owned lands. And then finally, the departmental surplus for the engineering department of $129,000 to fund both life cycle and expansion related road and bridge infrastructure is also being recommended. All of these projects will be brought forward to council for approval. The second recommendation is the transfer to the contingency reserve. Again, going back to the ARB settlements, it's expected or recommended that 500,000 be earmarked for pending ARB settlements, and the remainder be used to manage unfunded one-time projects. 630,000 be transferred to the infrastructure reserve as the sewer department surplus to fund future sewer projects. 500,000 be transferred to supplement the deficit relating to funding future fire vehicle purchases. 300,000 be transferred to the Uptown Reinvention Reserve, and another 300,000 to support projects along the waterfront. Administration is also recommending that 200,000 be transferred to the Arts and Cultural Reserve, as the next major project within the municipality's three pillars will be work to be done on the Leamington Arts Center. So this would include to fund a building assessment and preliminary designs of the LAC. The surplus in the fire department itself is also being recommended to be transferred to the fire reserve. It is being recommended that 100,000 be transferred to the Kinsman Complex Reserve. The municipality has recently received preliminary concept designs for a newly refurbished and expanded weight room, and this would partially fund that project. And finally, just a housekeeping item, is 10,000 be transferred to the Parks Reserve. The municipality, as you will recall, received this money from the Windsor Essex Community Foundation through Mr. Honey, and these funds are to be used to provide for landscaping within Shotton Park. So the departments that are funded through fees, including parking, sanitation, and building, are outlined on page 6. Transfers to these reserves are highlighted in my report. And the user rate funded department of PCC and water are also outlined on page 7. These departments have a sustainable self-funding model, and as such, the reserve transfers have also been made. So before council tonight, it is recommended that the transfers of the 2018 municipal taxation funded surplus funds of $3,950,715 be approved as outlined in Table 1. Information regarding the 2018 year-end variance analysis be received. Information regarding the transfers for the net financial positions of parking, sanitation, and building departments, as well as the rate-funded PCC and water departments for 2018 to their respective reserves also be received. Information regarding the transfers to reserve for committed projects in 2018 be received, and the schedules regarding the ending balances for the 2018 reserve and reserve funds be received. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Are there comments? Are there questions? I'm going to start at the far end, if you don't mind, Deputy Mayor. I'll start with Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Laura, excuse me, we're anticipating this sewer line for the north end coming in. What are we doing to prepare for that? I know we've spent a substantial amount of funds already in doing the EA and everything else with this, but if we got the go-ahead, say, this year, that the ministry comes through and says, yeah, we want it, we're going to partially fund it, what are we going to do for money? Do we have some? Do we go to debentures, or what would be our strategy?
Through you, Mayor McDonald. We're really working through that financing strategy. As you know, that there are many alternatives that we can look at. It would be highly dependent on the upper levels of funding that we receive to go forward with the project. So depending on what that composition would be, certainly we would look at what portion would be municipally funded, and then there may be an element that is landowner funded as well. So we are working through that right now. So far, we have fully funded all of the project expenses through the municipal resources.
Hey, thank you, Mayor. Like, this is not a small project. I think we're looking at millions for that typical area. And even if we do with property or everything else, the municipality has to come up with the money prior to us collecting or putting on the tax base or whatever. And I guess that's where I'm going with this. Can we afford to do that if this becomes viable within the very near future, I guess? Do we have the reserves, do we have the money, or, you know, because we have to put, like, we're not going to get 100% funding, we know that. So, I mean, if the municipalities kick in, it's going to be 25, 50, or whatever the percentages are. I guess I'm just concerned where we're going to get the money, because this is a project I think that's near and dear to everybody sitting around this table here.
Mr. Sharon, did you want to speak?
Your worship, only that certainly understand your question, Councillor Jacobs. If the question is trying to get at, have we earmarked funds and are we starting to put money aside specifically for that project, the answer is no. Probably not necessary at this particular point in time, recognizing that we do put funds away into various reserves for various purposes. The financing strategy for that particular sewer, there's a lot up in the air right now. Probably the biggest ball in the air is, well, what is the local contribution going to be? What could the local community actually absorb with regards to the local contribution to the sewer? So recent estimates have the total cost of the sewer at approximately $80 million. Certainly locally, it's advocating to the upper levels of government to try and get as much cost sharing out of that for that sewer as possible. Then it would be a matter, if upper level government funding is secured to a certain percentage, then we're going to have to look at, well, what is that municipal contribution? And there are a number of different ways in which we can assign those costs. Essentially what we're doing is assigning those costs to the residents of Leamington. Primarily, you want, for a piece of infrastructure like this, you want the users of the system and the future users of the system to be paying the cost and not the tax base generally. So there would be a number of different strategies, and we've identified them. We've called them out in the EA. You can do various things like individual property charges based on flows. You could have area tax rates. There's going to have to be a large discussion about capacity. Ultimately, you'll look at, well, what is the capacity of the sewer, and likely lean on capacity in order to come up with some sort of proportional benefit to start assessing to these lands. Then the discussion comes about, well, you have the current users. Those are the easy ones because you know what they're going to need out of the system, and it's easy to charge them because they'll be the ones that are benefiting from it immediately. But what about all your vacant lands? And where you have open field, regular, typical agricultural lands, how do you go about saying, well, you have 100 acres in prime greenhouse development area, therefore, you're paying a certain fee? That will likely be a component of it, but council will likely want a solution that balances an upfront fee such that there is some stake in the game, recognizing that the property value has been substantially increased because there is access to the sanitary sewer, but also recognizing that it's just a farm right now. It's not a greenhouse operation requiring all of that demand. So, council, we're certainly putting our heads to it, but I think we would be getting, way out in front of ourselves if we started sitting down and trying to build various scenarios on how we would fund this particular project at this point in time. We're focusing still on completing the EA. We're really close, working with the Ministry of the Environment, who has paid specific attention to this particular project and are requesting some things of us. Once that EA is secured, then it's trying to secure upper level of government funding, and then from there, it's trying to get a financial plan in front of council that council can live with, and most importantly, the residents can live with, and the benefiting users can live with, to fund that difference. But we are not setting money specifically aside for it. I think at that particular point in time, once we get a model in front of council that they can accept, it would be, well, how are we going to fund that? What funds that we currently have are we willing to put forward to that particular project? And what are some other financing mechanisms that we may want to take advantage of, debt for the project, those sorts of things.
Further?
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Rob. I guess where I'm going with that, like you say, the EA is just about completed. So basically, it's a shovel-ready project, correct?
Through your worship, I wouldn't call it shovel-ready just yet, Councillor. We would say the first hurdle has been achieved. To get it shovel-ready, we would have to go into detailed design. And certainly, that's the next discussion we're having. We believe that the focus needed to be finishing the EA and then seeking additional funding for the project without getting into detailed design at this particular point in time, recognizing that a lot of money has been spent on the project already, and to go into detailed design for a phase one, perhaps Seacliff Drive to Oak Street as an example, would be a significant amount of money, and that once we completed the EA, if we can secure funding, we can start phasing it and get that first phase, the detailed design of that first phase initiated right away, such that it would be a shovel-ready project. But we have to be careful with this particular project because the primary service area is at the top end of the sewer, meaning we need a strategy from end to end before we start building any part of this particular sewer, because you don't want to get part of the way there and realizing that we don't have the financial capacity to keep going.
You're welcome. Deputy Mayor, I have you next.
Thank you, Worthy Mayor. I guess through you to Laura. Table 1, I see no drainage reserve. And then on page 94, I see a lot of variables. Number 6, I'm going to read at the top. Variables for the drainage department, unfavorable. And that, what would be, or does drainage have a reserve?
Through you, Mayor McDonald, drainage does have a reserve. And if you look on Schedule 3, those are the projects that are being carried forward from 2018 into 2019. The balance in the drainage reserve is right now 1.137 million.
Anyone else? Excuse me, anyone else? Councillor Dunn.
To you, Madam Mayor. Laura, I'm just curious about the water loss, how it says it's higher than usual. So what's that equate to, and do you have a dollar value, possibly?
Do we want Mr. Sharon to speak to that?
Oh, forgive me, Laura. We had spoke about water losses. Okay. All right. Yeah. Typically, 2018 was an interesting year for water losses, not in a good way, because typically we have been around 10% water losses in our system, which is quite good given a system of our age. In 2018, we approached 20%. So our water losses almost doubled, $300,000 to $600,000. And we are dissecting an enormous amount of data right now to try and figure out why that is in a particular year. To us, it's signified something, that had happened. It's not just a trend, right? It's a doubling. There's an issue. There was either an issue with the billing meters, or there's an issue with one of our it's an issue with some billing meters, meaning it's either an issue with billing meters to some of our very large customers, or it's an issue in the billing meters from from Union Water, where we purchase our water. One of the biggest challenges right now is that, the tools we have to do this job, given our current system, it's like having a hammer and a chisel. When we have the smart meters in and we have all of this data feeding into the smart meters and we have our zone meters in and we're tracking this, which is only a matter of time, it'll be like having a scalpel. We'll be able to know this stuff on a monthly basis. It's one of the benefits of smart metering. But right now, we are going through and trying to understand why that is. So we're literally taking large customers, trending them on a year-by-year basis to seeing have these large customers changed. There's a number of greenhouses are coming on online all the time. Is there a timing issue? Was it simply a timing issue where some of these large customers haven't been read based on their operations, and it's just a matter of catch-up, such that when the fiscal year is balanced, that we'll be able to see that, and perhaps we'll see a reduction in 2019. So we're trying to trend that. A lot of challenges with regards to how we're billed. We're billed from Union Water on a monthly basis. We're billing all of our rural customers, including the greenhouses, every 2 months. And so to try and reconcile those billing numbers is quite challenging. But 2018 did see that level of a jump, and we're trying to figure out why that is. We've been corresponding all week on that, Councillor.
Further, when is expected to have all of our new meters in place so that you'll be able to pull on that extra data to solve these problems?
Yes, we're hoping to have all the meters in place by the end of this year. That project should be complete. The zone metering part of that, which is an exercise primarily to understand exactly where our water losses are. Even at 10%, we can do better than that. When we have zone meters, we'll be able to have our entire network broke down into a number of different zones, and we can see, this particular zone is doing great. It's at 4% water loss. This zone's over here is at 17%. Let's focus in on that particular zone to drop that 10%. So the zone metering exercise will likely take a little bit longer to get there, but we'll have all the smart meters up and running this year, Councillor.
Deputy Mayor, did you still have a question, or was that on my list from before? That's it? You're moving it, Councillor Dunn, thank you, and seconder, Councillor Thiessen, all in favor, and that's carried. Moving on to other matters for approval, there are none. And then consideration of bylaws, Ms. Percy.
Bylaw 41-19 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Municipality of Leamington at its meeting held July 9th, 2019.
All in favor? Oh, moved, sorry, I just had a blip. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Wilkinson, all in favor, and that's carried. Now we move on to notices of motion, and there are none. Open session. Councillor Hammond.
Your Worship, thank you. Rob, I thank you for the correspondence you sent out, I think it was this week or last week, with respect to the advanced screen that we were trying to get on the corner of 77 and Ontario Road, and the traffic light, or not the traffic light, I'm sorry, the street light on the corner of the 6th concession. I was really disappointed in hearing the county's response to both of those, and I asked that moving forward, we could spend a great deal of, I see in the reserves here, we've got $5,000 set aside for lighting in the rural areas. I would really like to see a street light put on the corner of the 6th to begin with. I think, wasn't there one there before, and it was taken down when they were doing all the work? I thought there was one there in the past, and I may be mistaken about that, Rob, but even if we have to pay for it, I'd like to see us move forward and try to get a light on the corner of the 6th. It's been asked for numerous times. And that doesn't mean that I don't want you to continue working on that advanced green, because I don't believe in some of the stats. And I see you've asked to have them redone, so thank you for that.
Councillor Dunn.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to shout out to all the staff and all the volunteers for the Friday night Mill Street Market, it rocked. I was really happy to be there, especially all the residents coming out. It just seems to be really blooming. I think everybody's coming out and really enjoying and partaking in it, and I really, really appreciate everybody coming out and all the effort by everybody. It's really fabulous to see that. As well as the Canada Day celebrations, that was awesome as well. Right from all the entertainers and all the people there. The singing national anthem was awesome, absolutely awesome, and then the fireworks taking off. Oh, that was just fabulous. Kudos to everybody to partake in that. In the community as well. It warms my heart. I had tears in my eyes. I loved it immensely.
Those were the best fireworks ever.
Oh,
Best.
absolutely incredible.
Yes, good. Thank you. I have Deputy Mayor next.
Really, Mayor, thanks. I was going to comment before, but I figured I'd leave it till this, about the installation of the smart meters. I've got mine put in today. Nobody else on the street has even called, so I'm putting on an appeal that everybody should call if you want to get it done. I don't want to tell you how long it took my guy to do it, but I will say 10 to 20 minutes of your time. And I just want to know, if you're planning on the end of the year, what happens if they don't allow you to come in the house? Like, is there a recourse for that or next steps?
Through your worship. Well, ultimately, if the customer refuses to allow the infrastructure upgrade, then the service will be discontinued to the property. Certainly, that's the last step. We're not in the business of shutting off water. We're in the business of providing water. So it is a very seamless exercise. The customer shouldn't notice a difference. And you're right, Councillor, probably took the installer about 20 minutes to do mine as well.
Thank you. And we're the mayor then. Also, I don't know how you managed at your end on the Thursday night, but I had an excellent time at the LDSS graduation. I was very impressed, and congratulations to the class of 2019.
Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mayor. I got 3 things tonight. First is a petition, and I've never presented a petition before, but it's from the residents of Joanne Court. Everybody has signed the petition except for 5. I said if they do that, I would present it to council and hand off to our clerk afterwards, which I'm assuming is going to go to engineering afterwards. But anyway, dear Leamington Town Council, we the residents of Joanne Court in Leamington petition the town to permit parking on both sides of our street. Our neighborhood is a rather small community. Many of the residents require additional parking on the street. The residents that live along the west side of the road have no choice but to park in front of their neighbor's house or park on their side of the road and risk getting a parking ticket. Many of us do not feel comfortable taking up parking spaces in front of our neighbor's house out of respect for them and their space. Receiving a parking ticket on our street is not very common until recently. Within the last few months, there have been at least 5 parking tickets given out. In all those cases, the residents or their visitors were parking in front of their own home and were likely close by. We understand that this is how all roads were posted when our subdivision was constructed. However, we also understand the new streets and local developments are being posted to allow parking on both sides of the street. It is believed that this will act as a traffic calming effect. We believe that Joanne Court meets the requirements under Section 5.7 of the Leamington 2012 Traffic Study Update, which recommends allowing local classified roads 8.5 meters wide with less than 1,000 annual average daily traffic to have parking on both sides and a shared through lane. We ask you kindly consider making this change to the parking on our street, and thank you for your time and consideration. Jesse Renaud, Joanne Court resident. So I'll give that to the clerk. Second thing I have is, it was raised to me by a resident that lives near County Road 31 and County Road 14, 9th concession. We've had a number of accidents out there. Well, he's brought it up that it's been considered in the past and been discussed. That's kind of a hot spot for accidents. That's where the flashing beacon is, red one way, yellow the other way. Recently had a pretty serious accident there. It could have been worse, but he's hoping that we could consider, and I know those are county roads, so I might need some help from our county colleagues, to consider putting up a better traffic light there than the flashing beacon. I've asked Sergeant Jerry Ribble to get us the data going back however far he can. I just asked him today for that. He's going to pull the data on the amount of collisions that have happened there. So once I have that, I will pass that on to, I'm assuming since they're county roads, should go to Larry and Hilda since they're our county representatives. So anyway, I'll have that for you in the future. Third thing, Councillor Dunn, you touched on the market. Yes, it was another great market event. What I seen that night was something I just want to share with you. Many times people are critical of our staff, including me at times. Anyway, I seen two of our younger staff that night who, I don't even know their last names, but Jacob and Michaela. You might pass by them here. Anyway, we had one of those situations happen that night where we were like, oh crap, what do we do now? One of our team members, of course, got sick, and these two young members of our staff really stepped up, took the reins, full confidence, and closed out that festival, no hesitation whatsoever. And they also showed a lot of empathy towards one of their fellow workers, which I thought was fantastic. So I'm hoping that the mayor will at some point, stop by their desk and say, it's been noticed what a great job you did. And I should give a special recognition to our acting CAO as well, who was at home resting in her jammies that night comfortably. And when she was needed, she was there then as well. So fantastic work by our staff. Thank you very much.
Just to add to that, happy to pass on your kind words to Michaela and Jacob. I had a meeting with Jane Mustak. I've already told Mr. Sharon this on Friday, and I mentioned to her about our concerns. And I know Deputy Mayor, has already spoken as well with the county, so they are going to look into it and start with something like a bigger flashing light to warn people. The increase in traffic has been phenomenal, both on County Road 31 as well as County Road 14. There's always other issues going on, distracted driving, whatever, but we need to make sure that people are aware of that really dangerous intersection. Thank you. Is there anyone else? I've got one thing. I'll quickly tell you about the, yesterday we had the inaugural ride for the bus, the LTW bus. It was great, joined by Mayor Santos, Mayor Snively, some staff as well, and met Mayor Dilkins and Patty France at St. Clair College. So it's a real cooperative effort. Again, thank you to staff for the work that they did, the fact that they saw the funding opportunity and took it upon themselves to do that. That's fantastic. So many good accolades, both in social media, phone calls, and the people at the function, so just wanted you to know that. I have a thing that I'd like to ask, and probably this would apply to Ms. Orton. I want to speak to the cannabis bylaw for a moment. I'm looking for a report on the no less than 200 meters away from a sensitive use, such as a school or a park. I've been looking at a particular plaza that has some other adult substances for sale that are within the, or part of it's okay. I guess most of it is within that 200-meter distance. It is a really good location should someone come in and look at that. It's already located with other addictive substances that are an issue in communities everywhere. So anyway, I'd like to ask staff to see what other sensitive areas would be impacted if we made a change in this minimum distance requirement. And if it could be possible to have it for the next council meeting, I'd really appreciate it. And with that, Councillor Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I could impose upon you, and I don't know if you're at liberty to speak, in regards to the situation on Point Peely Drive, I know we're all been getting a numerous amount of calls from certain individuals in those particular areas. Are you able to make any comment?
I'd prefer not to do them in public.
At this time? Okay, thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Counselor Dunn, Counselor Hammond, all in favor, and that's carried.